Welcome to the Business of Black Business, a talk show that interviews Black entrepreneurs and advocates for Black business. The topics of conversation include access to capital, best business practices, success stories, and more. Now introducing our host, Mr. Jay Reynolds.
Good morning. My name is Jay Reynolds, and welcome to the Business of Black Business. Now, my question to you is this. Have you ever considered launching a new product? Do you have a leverageable point of difference? Let's talk to a person today that created a space for themselves in a very, very crowded kind of field. My name again is Jay Reynolds. I own Wolf Creek Consulting. We are a top-ranked executive staffing firm with offices in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, West Palm Beach, and Birmingham, Alabama. We primarily place people in finance, accounting, and IT. Again, welcome to the Business of Black Business. Now, this show is designed to help Black entrepreneurs and would-be Black entrepreneurs navigate the kind of murky waters of how to start a business, how to grow a business, how to manage a business. It's a unique opportunity to gain access to people you would never be able to gain access to, very successful entrepreneurs that have made it, to hear how they did it, to literally be in the room where it happens. Now, as always, the first thing we need to do is thank our sponsors. And I want to thank DeMesman and Dover Personal Injury Attorneys. Thank you guys for doing all that you do to support small business, as well as the HBCUs, the Florida Lottery, Career Source South Florida, AARP, and the University of Miami Research for All. Now, we have a really unique opportunity today to interview somebody that I really think a lot of, a person that has carved out a space for himself in a very difficult or crowded field and made introduce a product that had a leverageable point of difference that's really making its mark. Chima Burey, the founder of Duke and Dame. Chima and Armani Macaulay endeavored to redefine the flavored liquor category by creating a high-value, high-quality, 100% natural flavored whiskey that would appeal to just about everybody, men, women, young, old, whiskey enthusiasts, whiskey newcomers, and everybody in between. Now, just talking about Chima prior to starting this, prior to building B&M CRAFT SPIRITS, Chima worked as a trade advisor for private equity groups and family offices, offering advice and expertise in financial markets and trading strategies, both foreign exchanges and commodities. Now, before his trading career, Chima was director of finance for an international finance firm which focused on trade and multinational project development. Chima earned his BS degree in finance from the University of Florida and holds a Series 3 license. He is also a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, 06, good brother.
06.
And just happy to have you here, Chima. I've luckily been in the room a couple times and on presentations where you presented, and I know that your story is compelling and interesting, and I just can't wait for people to hear about who you are. So tell us, audience, a little bit about yourself and things like, talk to me about where you grew up. Talk to me about who your influences are. Tell me why you are the man that you are today.
Well, Jay, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being here and being able to share a little bit and obviously talk with you a little bit about the brand and myself and our story. Well, I'm a product of immigrants. My parents migrated from Jamaica when I was 2 here to South Florida, and just grew up in the Miami area and loved all things Miami. Just really enjoyed just the culture, the diversity of the city, and just getting to know just how we all fit together. And from there, just moving to Gainesville, University of Florida, was a whole different dynamic.
Absolutely.
It was a whole new world for me, because I grew up in they call it Miami Gardens now, but I grew up in Carroll City,
Sure.
and the
Culture
University of
shock
Florida
then. Going to
was
work.
a big time culture shock for me. So, and you just learned how to navigate all waters, which essentially you have to do in order to be successful, in business and in starting a new venture like this, because you're not just creating a product for just you and your area or your community. You're creating a product that's a mainstream product. And so, or if you're in a corporate environment, you're not just um, working with people who just look like you. So the University of Florida, that experience really not only opened my eyes to different people, different cultures, and just helped me understand, okay, well, how do other people think, and how are you able to interact with them and find commonalities that you didn't necessarily know existed before. So really, really great experience at the University of Florida. There, I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha, and that experience was amazing. And just becoming a part of that brotherhood was definitely life changing, and has helped me and benefited me since. So, yeah.
Right. Who are your influencers? Who are the people that tell you the truth?
My parents, to be honest, my parents have always been honest, and sometimes a little brutally honest, but
Yeah,
definitely
of
keeping
course.
humble.
That's what we
So
need,
it's
right? That's exactly what we need.
absolutely. I think in today's culture, we have a lot of parents who want to be their children's friends, or they want to be too buddy buddy with their kids, and not necessarily being that role model, or what you realize that kids crave discipline. I have a daughter now. She's 24. She'll be 25 actually next week, and she's graduating this May from Emory in Atlanta.
Mm.
And she's one of the things that, as I was raising her, and I learned is, yeah, they may want something at 10, or they may, think that something is best for them at that age, but they can't see around the corner. And our job as parents is to be able to prepare them for what's around the corner. And a lot of times that's not popular. A lot
Right,
of times
right.
the child is uh, unhappy, or let's just be real, they're just mad that they didn't necessarily get their way. So my parents weren't shy to say no, and they were definitely hardworking, and so that example was set for me. My dad was a principal in Miami-Dade County school system here,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Back in the day
and
when there
so
was a paddle with that was back
uh,
in the day when they had a paddle with holes in it, right?
100%, and so I got that many times at home.
Yeah.
So they weren't afraid to use it.
We were coming up at the same time when the principal say, "Look, I can call you a mom, or we can go to the office and take care of this," right?
Absolutely. I always chose going to the office because whatever they were doing wouldn't compare to what I was going to get at home.
Oh yeah,
So,
exactly. Hey, don't call
absolutely.
mom. I'm going to the office with you. Lean across the file cabinet, get mine, and go back to class.
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
Talk to me a little bit about this. I mean, it's such an interesting story, right? Why a spirits company, right? You're a finance guy, right? You're a
yep.
finance guy. So you're
Hmm.
not a marketer. You were not a marketer. You were not a products goods person, but you find yourself in a space
Yes.
that doesn't take prisoners, right?
At all. Yeah.
So talk to us a little about that. How did you decide to start a spirits company?
Well, it started actually having dinner one night. Was working in New York, and a bunch of my buddies, we were all at dinner. And you're a whiskey guy, so you remember Fireball, the cinnamon whiskey,
Of
when
course.
that first hit
Yeah,
the
of
market,
course.
and the phenomenon that was, or still is, to be
Yeah.
honest. So when that first hit the market, it was this big buzz around this cinnamon thing that tasted like big red gum.
Yeah.
And so at dinner, half the table had tried it, the other half hadn't, and we were having a conversation around this new thing. So one of my buddies brought around for the table, sparked a conversation. If you could start your own flavored whiskey, what would it be? So when the
Wow.
conversation came to me, I said, I would do something reminiscent of Werther's Original or Sugar Daddies or Sugar Babies candy, how Fireball was reminiscent of that Atomic Fireball or Big Red Gum, as I mentioned. And everyone was like, wow, what a great idea, because, everybody loved Sugar Daddies or Sugar Babies, or, your grandma used to give you the Werther's Original with the gold wrapper and things like that. So just dinner conversation, as we all
Mhm.
have, but didn't take it seriously. Of course, went back to work, didn't do anything with it. And years later, I'd moved down to Miami, moved back to South Florida from New York. And about a year or so after that, when Amani had left investment banking and was talking about, like, what his next steps were, he was visiting here with me in South Florida for a few weeks. And I told him about this idea. I'm like, man, I had this crazy idea years ago about this salted caramel whiskey. By this time, Tennessee honey had come out, exploded.
Yeah.
Crown
Oh
apple had
man.
come out,
Oh my God.
right? All the Crown flavors had come out, and things were just exploding. So,
Apple and
yeah,
ground
flavored
apple.
whiskey became a
Yeah.
category. Flavored whiskey just wasn't Fireball anymore. It was
Hmm.
actually a category with different flavor or flavors. And so I was like, man, there's still room for this salted caramel idea. Like, so the business side of me was really like ticking in. It's like, let's look into it. Let's throw some money behind it and see what happens. So we immediately started doing some research. We talked to a few different distilleries just about the process. How would it work? We talked to some spirit owners about um, what their journey was like. How do you get it off the ground? How do you ultimately get it on the shelf? And that's really difficult. Um, so we did a bunch of research, and so the finance side of us really kicked in.
Right.
We built models. We did all the research and the networking and asking all the right questions, and then just making the assessment. Okay, what is it going to take? How much capital is it going to take for us to do it? How much are we going to have to spend to see if it's worth spending the second tranche? So just really developing a plan as to how much are we going to invest in this idea to see if it has legs before we start investing more and more. And that was the beginning. So that's how we started.
I got to tell you, Chima, I got to say this to all the boys and girls out there that are listening to you right now. You have said a couple of things that I have said a million times, and I have asked other entrepreneurs like yourself, and serial entrepreneurs as well. This, what's the secret sauce, kind of, sort of, and we'll talk about that
Mhm.
later from you. But what you just said was everything. You said that you did the research. You said that you ran the numbers and you reran the numbers. And you start talking about, hey, look, how that I'm going to have to invest some of my money, but where's the second tranche of money going to come from? Whether it's family and friends or, an angel or something like that.
Yep.
What you just basically said is that you did not jump into this thing willy-nilly. You had a great idea, but you did not jump into it willy-nilly. And it's like ready, fire, aim. If that's not at all what you did
No.
something totally different. So I really want to hear, I want the budding entrepreneurs out there to hear exactly what you just said. This is a very successful guy who was very intentional about the way he did this, and finance, making sure that he understood where he was headed, ran model after model, probably, and to make sure that it made sense. So thank you for that. That was actually really, really, really good. Um, Tell me a little bit about the fact that you introduced this thing. We'll come back to the name, but I want to understand what happened when you launched this salted caramel flavored liquor. Did did you poke a sleeping bear? You know, did somebody decide to say, "Oh hell, that's a great idea, and we got a lot more money than him"?
Uh-huh.
uh, what happened?
Well, great question. Great question, because um, cash is king, and it applies to a lot of
To
areas,
most things.
to most things. And so, as we're starting this new budding business, and we're self-funded, and we are having to allocate monies to different pockets, right? So we're creating the whiskey, and obviously you have to buy your widget, whatever that widget may be. And for us, it's whiskey. And so now we have whiskey, we have to market it, right? We have to have a budget for that, and we have to do events and activations and all these types of things. And so we don't have as much money as Jack Daniels with their Tennessee Honey. We don't have as much money as Crown Royal and then obviously in the Fireballs, as we mentioned. However, we had this grandiose idea that we can compete with them, that we can go on a shelf with these billion-dollar companies and actually move the needle. And a lot of that self-belief really has to be backed up by you creating a product. And in this industry, we call it the juice. Your juice has to speak for itself. Like you have to create something dynamic to where it was remarkable enough for us to be on the shelf next to these billion-dollar brands and even take market share for them. How do we do that? Well, our idea was to create a better product. And if we could create a better product, then maybe word or the buzz around our approach to flavored whiskey would take on. And yes, people notice, and people notice that you don't even realize that they're noticing, because you think yourself as, our head is down, we're building a small business. But yeah, the big boys, they're noticing, and they're paying attention.
Right.
Yeah, they other companies came out with salted caramel as well, and there was like one or two in the market as we were developing ours, had launched, and then now it's just not only how we compete against other salted caramel flavored whiskeys out there, but as a whole, because our approach to this category was we don't like sugary, sweet, syrupy spirits. And so we set out to create a spirit that had the lowest sugar content in the industry. So our differentiating factors, we are only 1 gram of sugar per serving, where our closest competitor is Tennessee Jack Honey at 5 grams of sugar per serving. And so you have all the way up to Fireball, which is like 11 grams of sugar.
Like 11 or 12 or something crazy like that. The body can't even process it.
Right. So for us, and we don't use high fructose corn syrup, and everything is all natural in our bottle. And that was another thing that we wanted to use to differentiate ourselves. We included 2-year aged bourbon in our blend, where most of our competitors, they use raw, unaged whiskey, and they use a bunch of caramel coloring instead of aging the whiskey to give it its color. So we knew we had something different. Now, how do we separate ourselves? But yes, that being said, your competitors notice, and they're quick to get to market too, and they have a lot of money to promote and push things. But as we've been growing, we've been able to take market share because we just created a better product and found a way to really let everybody know about it.
A leverageable point of difference that you can actually talk about. You know what I mean? That you can actually talk and market and whatever. 1 gram of sugar versus 5. That's huge.
Huge.
All natural. It's huge. Aged liquor versus raw. Just processed. Grain alcohol. Yeah, I'm not a distiller, but I do know that the difference between using something that's aged in an oak barrel versus not being, using that. Now, when the name Duke and Dame really conjures up an image of, kind of nostalgia for me. I want to hear where it comes from you. But for me, when I first heard it, I said, wow, that's pretty damn cool. It's kind of like it conjured up an old image, like for me, like the 20s, like the 30s, like when things were high quality and well dressed.
Yes.
So tell me where the name comes from and what you were thinking when you developed the name.
Well, we developed the name, and let me take you back a little bit. We developed the spirit first.
Okay.
And we had the whiskey down before we even knew the name. And we really didn't want it to be, okay, well, we were going to call it, Chima and Amani or something like that, that most liquor brands, they make the name about themselves. The name is about the distillery or the family, or, it's about let's tell our story to the world through this bottle. But we flipped that around, actually. We wanted it to be about the consumer. And we really resonated with how the consumer interacted and enjoyed our brand. And when people took a sample of it, they lit up, instead of, for example, when you take a shot of a tequila or any other spirit, people tend to cringe, the shoulder shrug and their eyes, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, what am I drinking? And they're just doing it to start the party or whatever the case is, or they're sampling. Most people who say that they don't like whiskey, but they drink vodka, most of them can't drink vodka straight because no, it's too intense. They need to, temper it with some type of chaser or whatever the case is. And if you tell people, all right, well, sample your favorite spirit neat, they're like, no, 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 I can't do that. I need to do something to soften it. But when people would sample Duke and Dane neat, not only are they drinking it straight, but they're like smiling and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And so
Yeah.
the reaction was more of a royal regal reaction rather than a cringe, very similar to what you're saying as far as that elegance. And we felt like, all right, well, if our customers had this royal regal type of reaction to our brand, let the brand be representative of that. And so we figured, how can we describe this feeling within this couple? Because what we noticed is that men and women were enjoying it equally. And most whiskey companies tend to just market towards men. And we were like, well, why is that? Data points show women are drinking more and more brown. More than 35% of whiskey drinkers are women. Why not be the first spirits company to include women in the conversation and in the branding of our
branding,
liquor, right? And not just market to them, but actually the branding. And so Dane, she's a female knight. She's a warrior. She's earned her knighthood. And we envision this power couple enjoying their whiskey together. So Duke and Dane, not just the Duchess, because the Duchess, she's just the wife. She hasn't done a lot. She's married well, but the Dane, because she is so accomplished on her own, in her own right, we liked that imagery together between Duke and Dane.
Okay, so I can hear you now. We buffered a little bit, but I think the audience was able to follow you as well. But I think we're 100% back now. But one of the things I liked about what you said is the fact that she had her own power, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had
Absolutely
established her own power. She's not just married well. She was charting her own ship. And if in fact you are, like you said before, you're building a brand that appeals to everybody, why not brand it day one to that to that significant segment of the population? I just think that's just really, really cool. I'm glad you told that story because I didn't know it. I just know how it affected me. Let's talk about the bones of this thing. To launch any business, quite frankly, I launched my business 20 years ago, 22 years ago, and I wish I could go back and have a conversation with my younger self. I would not use nearly as much of my money as I did. But tell me how you were able to infuse the cash in order to start your business, and how you were able to get financing for something that, let's call it, you would literally have to be able to sell this idea to investors because of the fact that it's a crowded market. And that's just you and I just talk. We're just talking really frankly, Tell me how you did that.
Well, it's two things. Amani and I came from a finance background, as you know, and so we know the way it works because of our previous life, our previous career. And you can either pitch an idea to an investor now, they are going to end up taking the majority of your company because they're taking on the majority of the risk if they end up funding it. To your point, this crowded market is going to take a lot of capital. It's a very heavy capital intensive industry, this particular one. Or you can actually build it, prove your concept initially, and then that way, when it is time for you to raise capital, you're giving up a lot less equity because now you've done the work of creating or proving that the concept works. So for us, like I mentioned before, because of our previous life, we were able to have a little bit of money to where we can fund or self-fund this project. And it's been great being able to do that, or carrying it now to the point where we have proven the concept. We've shown that it works. And we've won now 10 international spirit awards. We're rated third best flavored whiskey in the world. We have distribution in all different places, from MGM Casino to Carnival Cruise Line to Royal Caribbean as well. Throughout the Caribbean, we ship to 38 states. We're in 5 markets now. As far as on the ground, Florida, Michigan, New York, Maryland, DC, we've really proved that the concept works. And so now we are at the point where we're starting to have investor conversations as far as now, how do we lift with other monies in order to get the distribution, to your point. Speaking to your younger self, 22 years ago, like, all right, how do I leverage what you've initially built now and grow it and really utilize financing or other people's money to help you grow that idea. So that's the phase that we're in now. Yeah.
Okay. So what I like about the fact that pretty much everything you've talked about so far is how pragmatic it's been, really, really pragmatic. You did not, again, not to regurgitate, but jump into this thing with both feet. You basically spend some time and some late nights, and trying to decide how this is going to happen and how we're going to make sure we even protect our company from people that will invest in it and end up owning most of it. So I really just applaud you for that. But it hasn't been all gum and roses, right? It hadn't all been, gum and rainbows. No. Talk to us a little bit about the adversity, some of the adversity that you've perhaps faced. Give me a story of something that went wrong.
Oh man, lots go wrong. So we're constantly, as we call it, testing and learning, right?
Right.
We're investing in that education. But one of the first things that went wrong was the first marketing company we hired out the gate. They just didn't do a good job and wasted a lot of money. But it's the list goes on and on. We're always learning because we didn't come from this industry. We've had to study a lot. We've had to put in those hours. We've had to have multiple conversations in order for us to be able to minimize those mistakes and ask the right questions. So we can, as I mentioned before about, my daughter seeing around the corner, how can we leverage the relationships that we have, the network that we are now developing for us to see around the corner. Now we some of the initial setbacks that we had was just having that network within our friends or friend group or professional friend groups within this industry, because a lot of people within this industry don't look like you and I. And just being able, for example, if I want to open up a restaurant, I can probably talk to about 20 people right now about the do's, the don'ts, and how can I do this? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? But this particular industry, there was no one within my community, my immediate network that I could even ask to say, can you give me some advice as to how do I go about this? And that was one of our biggest hurdles, in all honesty. And we've now since developed relationships with other people. We're great friends with the people at Uncle Nearest, and Fawn has been a great help to us and her team. But it's really important for us to have these conversations to where we can encourage people to enter into new areas that may not be well represented by us, but they shouldn't be afraid to do it, because you can still network, you can still find a way to accomplish your objectives, even though that area may not be well traveled.
Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Let's talk about that a little. I want to drill down into it. Why do you think there are so few Black spirits companies out there? I mean, Uncle Nearest is the newest one that everybody knows, or the whiskey drinkers know, and we kind of know their story because we've always been talking about that in the Black community. That the guy that actually that developed Jack Daniels was a Black person, and then the master just basically stole the recipe and he became rich, but it was a Black guy doing it. There's always been stories about that circling around in our neighborhoods, but why do you think that there's so few Black spirits companies?
It takes a lot of capital, and some know-how to be able to do it. So as far as owning a distillery or even understanding how to make spirits, and being able to now create that, market it, have the relationships with the distributors who then have the relationship with the retailers to put it on the shelf. How do you that entire chain, that entire process? It takes so much capital to get it beyond the borders of your neighborhood. A lot of us have a reach around our neighborhood where we can drive local traffic to our business, but we've developed a global company, right? How do I reach people, in northern Michigan and upstate New York or Brooklyn or Maryland, or how do I reach people in the Caribbean now? We're in Aruba, Cayman, Turks and Caicos, USVI, BVI. How do you do that? And it takes capital to do it. And I think that you really have to think of, how do I expand this idea globally? And for a lot of us, we've been handicapped by a lot of things, whether know-how, reach, understanding how I got to get PR, how I got to do marketing in order to expand my voice or create that megaphone. And so these hurdles have been there, and I think there are a lot of companies now that are seeing success and growth and really showing us, regardless of the widget that you make, there's a way to do it. And I think now going forward, we're going to have a lot more global, Black-owned global businesses, not just in the whiskey space, but there is a recipe out there, and the stories are being told, and we just have to listen and follow along.
And it's so much knowledge. The knowledge that's available to us now is just exponential, right? From let's say 20 years ago, now you want to find out how to do something. If you are willing to invest the time and effort, you can find out how to do it.
Absolutely.
There's so much information out there. So different than the way it was, 10, 15 years ago. Advice. What advice would you give to, the viewers out there, the young budding entrepreneur that's looking to start their business? Let's call it secret sauce. What ideas would you give? What would you want to leave them with, Chima?
That they have to drink their own Kool-Aid. That they really have to believe in themselves.
I got you.
Yeah, it's so important. Quick story: when my daughter was an undergrad, she would call me and we would talk sometimes just about how tough it is, that process of going through college. And she's brilliant, bright young lady. And one day I told her on her whiteboard to draw the Kool-Aid man on the corner of her whiteboard. So anytime she feels any doubt or even, not feeling as confident, she can just look at that little reminder, and you have to drink your own Kool-Aid. You got to believe in yourself. So that one, confidence in you and your ideas, you got to believe that you are special, that you're able to accomplish that. But dream big, go for it. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Have conversations. Be curious. Be just ask questions. As a child, I always used to ask questions. I was just an inquisitive soul, and my older cousins used to be like, "Man, you ask a lot of questions."
Shut up already, right? Shut
right. Up. And I consider myself a perpetual student.
Yeah.
So never feel that you've arrived or that's not something new or there's something new that you can't learn. And the industry doesn't have to look like you for you to feel like you belong. If this is a dream or a goal of yours, then go out and do it and make it. And talent wins. Talent, desire, drive, and push, it always wins. And don't let anything shortcut you. Really push, and persevere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, and the only thing I would add to that, I guess, if for everybody's listening, don't be afraid to fail.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid to fail. Have a healthy fear of failing, but don't be afraid to fail. And I know how that sounds. Like, what the hell you mean? Bottom line is that sometimes you're going to fail. You're going to stub your toe, and but do all of the work that it takes to avoid that.
Absolutely. You have to learn. You have to learn from those mistakes because you have to try. You have to try. And yes, and sometimes as you push, as you go out there and put forth that effort, it doesn't always work. You're right. You stub your toe. But okay, well, great. Now I learned what not to do. So
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
keep going out there, keep trying to do your best, and but learn from those mistakes, definitely.
What's next for you guys? Anything?
Well,
Anything you want to talk
yeah,
about?
yeah, yeah,
Or you
definitely.
got some
We
projects on anything that you want to leave folks with? What's going on with you guys so we can stay tuned, and we want to definitely be able to, to follow you guys
uh,
and make sure that we are um, going along for the ride, right? We
abs-
all want to make sure that the local boy does well, and part of that is making sure that we invest in you with we invest in you, at the Total Wine and Spirits.
appreciate that. Yes, for sure. First, follow us, www.dukeanddame.com or at Duke and Dame Whiskey on Instagram and Facebook. And obviously, pick us up, gift us to your friends. Total Wine, ABC Liquors, Walmart Liquors, and many of the outlets as well. We actually just finalized a deal with Ruth Chris. We're going to be at all the
Wow.
Florida Ruth Chris locations starting in a couple weeks. We're going to have a few featured cocktails there, and really excited about that. So just worked with the team this past weekend, finalizing some of the recipes that are going to be offered, and that's a new relationship. But we're a lot of different places. So as you follow us on social media, you'll see the success of the brand, from cruise ships, Carnival and Royal, to now MGM Casino is carrying us, and a lot of restaurants and bars throughout Florida, Michigan, and New York. So really excited about the growth of the brand as far as additional SKUs, or what we call flavors. Yes, we're working on a couple. We're potentially looking at an apple and a peach.
Cool.
That we're in the lab and doing some creation with that, and also some RTDs, which is ready to drink. Very similar to like how White Claw has a spritzer, White Claw and Truly. A lot of people are familiar with that. We're looking at more creating some cocktails that are made obviously with Duke and Dame, and some of our popular cocktails that are served at some of our restaurants and bars locally that we feel we can and people rave about, and they would love to be able to pick it up at a store and just go, whether it's a barbecue or the pool
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
beach,
yeah, 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 yeah.
having a cocktail in hand ready to go that they can just chill and enjoy. So we're going to be entering that space soon as well.
God. Well, I got to tell you, first of all, I want you to hang on for just a second. We have to, I got to do a little bit of housekeeping, thank the sponsors and stuff like that. But I want to do that and then come back and say, and kind of wrap up before we go. But I got to tell you, really enjoyed talking to you, Chima. Hang on for one more second. Okay.
Got it.
And with that being said, what I want to do is to thank the sponsors. We certainly could not do this without our sponsors. First of all, I want to thank Demesman and Dover personal injury attorneys. Victor, you and all your crew, thank you for all you do to support small business, to also support HBCUs. You walk the talk. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I also want to thank the Florida Lottery for all you do to support us. Career Source South Florida. Now, I always like to talk about the positions that Career Source South Florida carries on their website. They basically each and every week they list about 20 jobs on their website that you can actually go to and and apply for. And in many cases, these jobs are really fairly high-paying jobs or really attractive positions. I'll give you an example of the top 8 or 9 or so. Uh, Cross-border investment analyst, $71 an hour. That's $160,000 a year. VP of programs, 52 dollars an hour, or about $100,000 salary. Housing specialist, $34 an hour. Electrician, $27 an hour. Payroll coordinator, $19 an hour. Help desk supervisor, $18 an hour. Administrative assistant, $17 an hour. Workforce mobile unit driver, $15 an hour, and school bus driver, $15 an hour. Those are some of the jobs that you literally can go to Career Source South Florida and apply for. And I also want to thank the University of Miami Research for Us All. Thank you guys for all you do. And AARP. Without these people, we certainly couldn't give access to give access to the community at large and budding business owners and maybe even some serial entrepreneurs out there, access to a guy like Chima. So thank you, people, you sponsors, for doing this. I always say, if it is to be, it's up to me. And Chima, really proud of the work that you have done. I really am very proud of the fact that you stay connected to the community. You are you are active in the community, and if anybody knows you, we see you. And my vote, and I will continue to vote on, to vote for you with my pocketbook, with my wallet, as I am a whiskey drinker, and this is good stuff. So all I can say, man, is thank you very much for all you do, and I appreciate you spending the time. I know you wear a lot of hats, brother. So thank you very much for being here, and spending the time to talk to us, and maybe flipping a light switch. Somebody's watching you, and somebody you today perhaps flipped the light switch. So I just want to thank you. So anything else? Anything parting words for you?
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate this. This is important work that you're doing, and keep it up. And we need it. And as you mentioned, the next generation needs to be able to hear these stories to inspire them to create the next great thing. So really appreciate you and the MIA group and everything that you guys are doing within the community. And thank you for the invitation. And I'm always here.
Gotcha. I remember you said that. Anyway, hey, thanks a lot, brother. I apprate you. 06. Thank you very much.
Bro. All right.